So this is our second dive of the day. We didn't have much of a dive plan the first time around. This time, we talked to Tammy and drew up a map, uh, laid out our path, and we talked about it and went over it probably like 4 or 5 times, I think. Didn't want to have any goofs this time around. So the plan was to make it back to this first shaft again at the 65-foot mark, depth 65 feet deep, and then head up to the 10-foot depth opening, and then make our way in. Last time we went right. This time we were going left. Tammy told us that there was a circuit to the left just past another T intersection where there's a shaft that was once completely open to the outside. She said it had been filled in for the most part, but that it was still wide enough or open enough for divers to crawl through, and it still allowed some outside light to make its way in. She even, I don't know if jokingly commented that we could rappel down the 20-foot shaft and start our dive from there, but we did not take her up on that offer. We decided to just swim our way back there. After that, we were going to head back the way we came, past the T that marks the first shaft. We were going to continue forward, back to the right, and then left at the second T, which was going to take us to another shaft that went down back to the main shaft, but in a different spot. The plan went as expected. We didn't miss any turns or anything, and it went pretty well, I would say. Once we made it back to the main shaft, because we didn't go out the way we came in, Zach ended up leaving one of his markers at the top of that first shaft, and that was intentional. He was going to come back and get it the next day. Oh, really quick, that wheel there is pretty cool. I think it was used as a pulley to raise and lower ore carts or ore buckets down that shaft. There's another opening similar to this opening here on the other side, directly across from it. I imagine that it was used to build some sort of crane or a support system for those pulleys, which is pretty cool that it's still there. So this is that intersection up at the top. Zach marked our exit point, or what would have been our exit point if we didn't decide to go down that other tunnel ahead of time. But he marked it nonetheless, and then this is where we start heading towards that open room circular circuit where the shaft that's open to the outside. So one of the things Tammy told us to look out for was a wooden crate with bottles in it, and she said that was pretty much at the point where we could surface. You'll see that once we make our way over there, we do kind of pop our heads up to look to see if we can see the light from outside. Too much curiosity, so I saw Spencer start coming up and taking a look, so I did the same. Then we get back in the water and work our way around that circuit back to back to where we started, and then start heading our way out after spending a little bit of time at the surface checking out the columns and stuff. So we'll touch more on that once we get over there. But one thing I wanted to talk about briefly is, this type of diving, overhead environment diving in general. I've talked to other people who were interested in getting into cave diving, but were not sure or had some reservations about, not being able to surface immediately. I didn't have really those worries or concerns. Obviously, it is a concern, and it's something that you have to train for. But I don't think it really bothered me all that much. And talking to my wife about it, I came to the conclusion that part of the reason why it didn't cause any further anxiety during the training than you would think it would, or how it affects other people. I think it's just the progression of my diving in general. I like wreck diving. I like diving on fairly deep wrecks in Lake Michigan. I got Eco certified last summer, and I've been just chomping at the bit to get out and dive more wrecks that were just out of reach for me previously. So with that, obviously when you're going down to a wreck that's 130 feet deep, even with no decompression obligation, even if you're just doing a recreational no NDL dive, it's not like a 30-foot reef dive. You don't have a hard ceiling, but it isn't an immediate exit to the surface. And because I started doing those types of dives several years ago, and that was generally the type of diving that I like doing, it was always in the back of my mind that I needed to be able to self-rescue, or to have a plan if something went wrong. So every time I went diving, I always dove with 2 tanks. My son got into Sidemount diving, and shortly after that, I followed suit and didn't really look back after that. One side effect of diving with 2 tanks all the time, I noticed anyway, is I think your anxiety level drops slightly because you have so much more air or gas than you need. And I noticed almost immediately that my gas consumption rate dropped noticeably, and only improved from there as I got more comfortable. But again, back to topic at hand. If you think about every dive as a overhead environment dive, like I said, deep dives, anything deeper than 100 feet, you're not going to do a free ascent, or what is that called? Emergency surface ascent. It's just not going to happen. So you have to have a game plan, whether it's a buddy within, swimming distance, or a bailout bottle or something along those lines, that's going to get you out of trouble and give you enough time, to make it to the surface safely. So, whether you're diving in a hard sealing environments, or doing decompression diving, soft ceilings as they call them, it's not much different mentally than cave diving is. If you're doing 150 foot deco dive in Lake Michigan, and your first, decompression stop is at 40 feet or 30 feet, you're not going to, again, just shoot to the surface, because there's going to be, other concerns, decompression sickness, decompression illness, things of that sort. Plus at those depths, surfacing too quickly, can cause a whole slew of other medical problems. So it's not an option. I've never seen it as an option. And I think having that mindset on every dive, it's kind of prepared me for this type of diving. Here in this section, you can see it's actually really bright. Zach, who's in the lead, also had a video light, so it really helped illuminate everything. But what I was going to say is here, obviously you can see Spencer's at the surface, and we do end up surfacing here shortly, I think, after we complete this circuit. So there is, ambient air that you can breathe. It's open to the surface through that shaft. But most of these systems, they're not, that's not the case. And you have to be prepared to, solve whatever problems you might encounter and get yourself out of there safely. Real quick side note, that was another bacteria formation that's pretty cool. That was kind of the fuzzy kind. I think if you've seen my other videos, I touched on them previously. It's just really cool how they make all these different types of formations. I think I filmed maybe 2 or 3 different types in this video. But back to my last topic. So yeah, I mean, even if you're doing a 30 or 40 foot dive, think of it as, if it were an overhead environment dive, a very deep dive where you couldn't surface in, under 30 seconds. If you approach every dive that way, I think once you get into more technical diving where you're going to have either hard ceilings such as cave diving or wreck penetration, it's going to make that transition a whole lot easier, because you're going to have that much more practice, not just mentally, but obviously, you should have your equipment set up or progressively change it, reconfigure it to allow you to self-rescue, to manage your gas supply, in case of a regulator failure, hemorrhaging gas. And on that note, I mentioned that we transitioned over to Sidemount way before even thinking about cave diving, because if you asked me 2 years ago if I would ever cave dive, I would tell you absolutely not. But because we started diving in Sidemount, it offered the ability to not only just carry more gas, but it also gives you the ability to manipulate the valves on your tanks very easily. If you're set up properly, if everything is adjusted correctly, the tanks, they're right there. And, if you build the muscle memory over the course of a lot of dives, and on every dive, practice shutting down valves and obviously in Sidemount you have to change regulators, so you get really good at that over time. It just becomes second nature, and I don't think I'll ever do back-mounted doubles, mainly because I've built up so much muscle memory diving in side mount, and side mount just works for me. It worked for me in wrecks. It worked for me, on boat dives. It works for me on shore dives. And obviously it was a really smooth and easy transition into cave diving, where, in some caves, you have to be in side mount. During one of our training dives, we went to Missouri and dove a location called Boiling Springs, and it is side mount only. I mean, I think at its highest point, it couldn't have been more than about 30 inches, 32 inches. And in some spots, I had to wedge myself through and pull and, kind of wedge my way in through some parts, because it's very low. It's so low that you would never make it through there with, with back-mounted doubles. Those are far and few in between, I think, if you're doing, just mainly mainstream cave diving, which I will probably stick to for the most part, unless I'm diving with somebody who's been, to a place that's side mount only as far as restrictions go. But they promised me that it's worth the dive, then I'll probably do it. But for the most part, I think stuff like this is interesting and about as much adventure as I need in my life. But here's that shaft that Tammy was telling us about. It was filled in a long time ago. I've seen another video where somebody has footage of this room, and that video's 10 years old, so I would imagine this was filled in probably even way before that. And that shaft comes out by the street, so I would imagine that it was filled in just for safety purposes, especially if people happen to be, bike riding or walking down that area or hiking or something, that they happen to fall in, they're going to hit that mound and not the water. Because even though it's not deep, if you're not prepared for it, the water is 50 degrees in a dry suit. It's nothing, it's like summertime down there. But if you're in regular clothes, you're gonna have a bad day and probably not make it out. So they filled it in. But it's still an interesting room nonetheless. There's some of our bubbles coming out. I want to say from Google Maps of this mine system, we might be above the main shaft. Well, actually, we are above the main shaft, which is why those bubbles are coming up. And now this is the second tunnel or shaft that we're going to swim down, and that's going to take us back to the main tunnel. It comes out, I'd say, less than 100 feet from the other tunnel that we went up. But I like this tunnel because it's not a straight square shaft. It kind of curves a little bit. You see Spencer trying to decide what the best way to make it down, because it is also a lot smaller. He chose to try to kick his feet down below him, and he inadvertently kicked up some silt. I wasn't too worried about it. I knew where I was going, because this is the second time going down the tunnel. I had the advantage of having followed somebody down that knew the best way to get down, which is head first. And then just you turn your body slightly to the left, where in the direction that the tunnel curves, and you're out. You're down at the base, and then you kind of work your way forward a little bit, and you're at the main shaft. So that was kind of cool. But a little bit something different than that really squared off straight vertical shaft that we went up. You saw the line there in the top left corner. I got my eye on it. Got a little silty here from, I think, from our bubbles, and it's from them working their way down. But we're down, we're out, and working our way back towards the main shaft. So on the way, like I mentioned, on the way back to this shaft, Zach did leave, I believe, at least 1 or 2 markers behind, but he said he was going to retrieve those on the following day. Overall, this was a really cool dive. I know I kind of talked over everything and really didn't point out a lot of the things I intended to point out, but you saw them in the video. Visibility was amazing over on that first circuit. I think it helped out quite a bit that Zach had a video light, so much better view. You can see he's got the light off now, and it completely changes just how much you can see. However, in the main shaft, it's always a lot murkier, a lot foggier. But yeah, another great dive. It's a good time. I'm glad I got to go down that curved tunnel again and see that big room over in that circuit to the left of the first shaft. Overall, a great time. Can't wait to go back there. No, my wife will be happy. I tell her I'm going again. Take care, guys.